Veterans History Project on VPS TV. I am Emily Shellhammer, and I will be your host today. Over the past few months, we have been working with district educators and VPS TV to create a series of interviews of veterans who are from Vineland and served in our country's armed forces. This series is a continuation of interviews that are a part of historical record of the Vineland Archives Alive project, which documented the history of Vineland through online student-created projects. Today is March 14th, 2013, and we are recording this interview in the TV studio at Vineland High School North. Assisting me today are members of the VPS TV crew, including David Sanchez, Dan Deola, Michael Giacomelli, Daniela Villeman, and Mark McGill. Producer is F. John Sabrana, VPS Executive Director of Communications. My guest today is Ron Martinelli. He was born on August 4th, 1947, and is 65 years old. Mr. Martinelli, thank you for being on the show today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
No problem. For the record, can you tell us what branch of the military and what war in which you served?
I was in the Army and served in the Vietnam conflict.
Okay. What rank did you hold?
Staff Sergeant.
Okay. Where were you stationed during the war?
Southern end of Vietnam, commonly referred to as the Mekong Delta area.
Okay. Were you drafted or did you enlist in the war?
Drafted.
You were drafted. How did you feel about that?
I was never against it. My father had served. Most of the members of my family had served, and I was called up, and I just felt it was something that I was supposed to do, and I just, wasn't really overly thrilled about it, but once again, it was something that I felt that I had to do.
How did your family feel about it?
Mom was very upset. Didn't want to see me go. My pop was very open-minded about it. He actually said that perhaps, if you want to go to Canada, I'll drive you there. But his last words were, Ronnie, I think this is something you need to do. And, I just went, threw the dice and said, let's see what the next chapter of life has to throw at me.
Right. What exactly were you doing before you were drafted? What were you in the middle of, like maybe educationally or?
I was going to school. Back then it was Glassboro State, night class, and I was working in the Acme as a retail clerk. And at nighttime, between classes and working at the Acme, I was playing the drums. So that was about it.
Okay. Do you have any other, you said you have other family that served in the military, correct?
Yes.
Could you give us a few details about that?
My father, Frank, was a corporal in the United States Army, and my great uncle, Joe, was killed. He was an aviator during World War II. My uncle Larry was a master sergeant in the National Guard. He seemed to be there forever. My uncle Joe served in the United States. On my mother's side, he served in the Navy. My grandfather had served in the Army. All my friends and neighbors in our neighborhood, fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, one way or the other, they had all served.
Okay. Even women, you said?
I don't know about the gals so much, but I go back to the days where the gals in Vineland, a lot of them worked in the clothing factories, and they were making uniforms for the Army, or the Navy, or whatever. It was a big business for the city, and so I guess they were part of the war effort. You could look at it that way.
Okay. When you were going off to basic training, what was going through your mind?
I guess, what part of it, I knew I was going to be in the Army, but I didn't know what part. I guess they gave us a questionnaire that was like a wish list. Where would you like to be? I always wanted to be a fireman. I knew that they had firemen in the Army. That's what I put. I didn't know where I was going. I thought I was going to Fort Dix. My whole career in the Army, I never saw Fort Dix. I ended up in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, which I had never heard of before in my life. I didn't even know such a place existed. So, I didn't know where I was going and how I was going to end up, where I was going to end up, but we went to this fort in Missouri, which was a newer installation. Had nice barracks, well-paved streets, nice looking operation, to be honest with you. And then the next question was, now I'm here, and what are they going to do with me? They're going to do basic training here, and then they had given us a series of tests, And the results of the test were, we feel that the result of the test, you should be a military policeman. I said, well, it's not bad. Lo and behold, of probably 240 graduates from basic training in my company, only 11 of us drew the infantry, and I was one of the 11. Didn't really know what that was all about either, but you know, I knew that I was going to see combat. You know, that infantry was a frontline unit, so that's where we're heading.
Some people are really excited when they find out that they're going to see combat, and other people are upset. Which one were you?
I don't think I was excited. Probably a little bit more worried, not upset. And I thought that I had to, you know, prepare myself. And I guess the fact that I was accepted into the non-commissioned officers program bought me some more time to get my head on straight. And during that program, I, you know, attained the rank of sergeant, and had the opportunity to teach recruits, which I really liked. I did enjoy that. And I didn't know whether I was going to remain doing that after the first cycle, so to speak, like a semester of troops. But then, you know, the word came that, okay, you've done your job as an instructor, you've attained the rank of sergeant, you are now going to go overseas, you're going to go to Vietnam. You got about a week or two off, prepare yourself, and you're going to go. And again, the luck of the draw. So some of my friends have been there. Some of my friends are going with me. Some of the new friends that I made, some of the folks from Vineland that I knew close that are going over with me. And okay, it's something we got to do. Let's make sure we're ready for it.
Mm-hmm. How long did you stay in Vietnam?
Usual tour of service was a year. I didn't make the year because I was wounded. Probably came home about a month early. Ended up being discharged from Walter Reed Hospital outside of Washington. So it was probably about a 10 and a half to 11th month tour of duty.
Okay. You say you were injured. What happened to you?
We got in a pretty good fight with the North Vietnamese Army unit. We had set up in an area, we were, let's see how I could relate this. If you were at the Marsh River in Vineland and you were on the Vineland side, during our period of occupying this area, the North Vietnamese had come on the Norma side, so they were right across the river. All hell broke loose. Big battle. We were outgunned. We were outnumbered. We took a pretty good beating. We called for some artillery support. Some of the ammunition that they shot didn't work. There was some actual, we actually saw some artillery rounds, mortar rounds to be specific, hit the ground and bounce. They didn't explode like they were supposed to. Things got rough. One of my buddies got hit. I went out to get him, and that's when I got hit. End of story. Next thing I know, I'm on a helicopter flying back to the hospital.
Where was the hospital?
Oof. I'm going to say it was in a town called Vung Tau in Vietnam. I'm almost positive. I think the name of the hospital was the 52nd Evac Hospital. They flew us back by helicopter. Not my battalion commander, but my executive officer, a major, came up to the table, and I told him, I said, listen, it's the third time. I don't care what you got to do, and I'm not going back. 3 strikes is enough. And he basically said, no, don't worry about it. You're going to be going stateside after this one. And they did the surgeries. I stayed in Vietnam for a while at this particular hospital. And then they shipped us over to Walter Reed, and then I was discharged from there. And luckily, came through it pretty well in comparison to some of the other fellows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were living there, before you were back at stateside, as you say, what were your living situations? What kind of barracks did you live in? What were they like?
We we worked from a ship. We were a what they called a riverine unit. There were World War II vessels called LSTs. Basically, all it was like a floating hotel with some machine shops and places where we could get fresh ammunition and work on our weapons and stuff. I guess we went to them every 30 to 45 days, got a couple of days off, got ourselves cleaned up, made sure we were ready for the next operation. And then from these LSTs, these bigger ships, we took smaller ships, boats actually, probably World War II vintage, maybe newer, but they were the boats that you probably saw in the World War II movies where the front end comes down and the guys come charging out. We spent a lot of time on them in the rivers, and basically when we had to get off them, the same thing. The front ramp went down, there was machine gun shooting, and out we came. It was the Mobile Riverine Unit.
Okay.
So barracks didn't exist, probably in the field 30 to 45 days at a clip. Sleep on the ground, sleep on an air mattress was basically like a raft that you would use in a pool. You didn't have anything but sea rations or long-range patrol rations, which I thought were pretty good in comparison to the canned food. And then, like you said, every 30 to 45 days they would pick us up and take us back to the mothership, stand down for 3 to 5 days, get yourself cleaned up, medically checked. Had a few beers, was basically like a little Liberty, sat out on the ship, and got ready for the next operation.
You say you slept on the ground. What was the weather like at night in Vietnam?
Humid, wet, damp, the moisture. I remember, more than anything, I remember the moisture and the humidity. Wet to the point that if you left a round or a bullet in the chamber of the weapon, the round or the bullet would swell up, and then the gun would jam. So it was basically, it was told us, if you're going to go to sleep, if it was your turn to sleep, you weren't on watch. Make sure there was no bullet in the chamber because the M16 rifle would jam. The bullet, the actual round itself, would swell up, and the first round would shoot, and then it would jam up when the second one tried to go in there. So I remember more than anything the humidity. I mean, it was hot, but the humidity made it worse.
Okay. When you were not on duty or not doing, anything business-wise, what did you do for entertainment, recreationally?
We had movies, of course, bed sheets on the side. If we were back in our division base camp, which did have barracks, they had bed sheets on the side of the barracks, and they would show a movie. Drink a lot of beer. They fed us good when we were back. Basically, listen to music, take your shoes off, because that was a big thing, to get back and be able to take your shoes off because your feet were always wet. To be able to get those boots off and walk around in a pair of shower shoes was like heaven on earth. So it was basically relaxation and, guys having a good time. A lot of socializing, a lot of discussion, a lot of talking, and a lot of rest.
Okay. What was the tone like among all of you? Was it positive, or was everyone sad? Was everyone happy?
I wasn't a fan of this war. To this day, I'm still not a fan of it. I don't think it accomplished anything. But I wasn't going to go against the wishes of the country. So as a platoon sergeant, I guess I had to be a motivator because I didn't want to see any of these guys not go home. So you tried to keep everything upbeat, put a positive spin on it. Difficult at times. Even though I was young, a lot of the fellows that were coming periodically to our unit were younger. And, there were guys that didn't want to be there. I don't blame them, I guess. There were guys that were confused. There were people that were scared. We all were scared. There were times where we just didn't know if we were going to come home. But I guess we tried to make the best of it. Was it a neat experience? I guess the word is neat because you got to meet people from all over the country. I had guys in my platoon that were from Alaska, guys from Tennessee, from all over the country. So you kind of shared services, you stories and things. And you talk about gelling. I think I'm realize that more now than any. We were close, and as we age, we seem to get closer. I get more letters from fellas now that we have email and all. We talk on email and stuff like that. But I don't think anybody was really there to win medals and come home a hero. I think everybody realized we had a job to do, and as confused as we were what this job was, I guess in my mind, and the way I approached it towards the folks that were under us, was the job was to get everybody home in one piece.
When it came to communicating with people back home in America, how frequently did you receive letters, and to who did you write?
I guess my best friend, Jim Rudd, if anything went wrong, I would send him the letter first and say, look, a little problem, I got nicked in an explosion and I got some shrapnel on me and I'm out for a little bit, but I'll be okay, and I need you to tell Mom and Dad and everybody, and then I'll write to them. So he was like my first line of defense, I guess, for lack of a better term. And Mom and Dad, of course. At the time, I was dating a girl from Louisiana that I had met when I was in Fort Polk. And I wrote to her, and, as things would happen, we became apart, I guess, because of the situation. But basically, to Mom, my father, and my friends, and the guys at the firehouse. I had a bunch of guys in the firehouse that were friends, and they would send me these stupid gift packages and letters that, made you want all the more to make it back home. And I would talk with those folks, too.
What does Vietnam look like when you get there? Like, aside from all of the war and, the people there, what is it really like in Vietnam?
We didn't get to see too much of the city life where we were. I tell people, if you had to visualize where we were and what it looked like, take a ride down the Marsh River. And you basically were in a wetland with rice paddies and few roads, none of them paved. Very few towns had electric. Some people had standby generators. The cities themselves I didn't get to see on a casual relationship, I guess. I got to see it under combat terms. And so I really didn't focus, but for folks that have gone there after, they said it's a very beautiful country. But it was very rural, I guess was the word that I would, where we were. We were not in a suburban or an urban area. We were in a rural farmland type of area, and you really didn't get to see much about other than water, rivers, canals, streams, rice paddies. Didn't really get to see much other than that.
What were the people like? Like, were they accepting of, were some of them accepting of the presence of Americans, or were all of them against it, or?
I think they were basically confused. We had the South Vietnamese Army. They were called the ARVNs, A-R-V-N-S. Okay, I don't think they were as sharp as an organization as we were. They weren't as well equipped as we were. And with no disrespect to the Vietnamese people, because we were intruders, I guess they didn't really like us, so I didn't dislike them, but I didn't trust them. Because we had heard stories, we've seen situations where you had people infiltrated into the inner circle of your operating area, and they were spies, they were intelligence people for our enemies. So consequently, I wasn't hostile. I tried not to be standoffish, but again, my guard was always up, and I wanted the guys in our outfit to remain that way too. No, I don't have any, what would be the word, anger towards them. I don't say anything derogatory about the Vietnamese people. It was just a chapter. It was to me, it was kind of middle of the roadish. I don't think I would go back there. Maybe I would, I don't know. I don't think so, but so be it.
Okay. Did you have any specialized training?
No, I went to basic training in Fort Leonard Wood. I went to Fort Polk. I actually went to Fort Benning, Georgia, for the non-commissioned officers program. Excuse me. I went back to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and I take that back. We did. We had a 9-week advanced infantry training program at Fort Polk, because I went from Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, to Fort Polk, Louisiana, then to Fort Benning, Georgia, for the NCO program, back to Fort Polk to teach guys going through the same program I had just gone through, and then overseas. So yes, we did have advanced infantry training. I guess the military, basically, everybody takes basic training. And then you get this MO, or MOI, I think it's called, method of service, MOS, method of service that you're going to be. And if you're going to be a military policeman, you get 8 weeks of military police training. If you're going to be an artillery guy, you get 8 weeks of artillery training. And I was an infantry guy, so I got 9 weeks of infantry training.
Okay. Would you like to discuss the book that you were featured in?
I was chosen to be in this book because of my battalion commander. We had a very famous battalion commander who ended up being a news correspondent. I think it was for ABC. He was a subject matter expert. And
could you please hold it up for the camera?
okay, I'm going to the front end like that.
Sure.
Where are we going? Is that good? We good there? Which way am I going? Over here.
There
I
you go.
gotcha. Okay. And unbeknownst to me, the battalion commander, Colonel Hackworth, David Hackworth, very famous soldier, as everybody would call him. He got in contact with this gentleman named Tom Matthews, who was the author. He called me. I had no idea what was going on, and he said, "We're doing a story. Your name had come up. It's about sons who had served and their fathers had also served. Would you mind talking to me?" And I said, "Well, no." He said, "I'll come to you." And the guy seemed on the level, and we sat down for, I guess, 3 or 4 hours and talked about what went on. And lo and behold, here we are. And once again, I don't think I would have been chosen unless it wasn't for Colonel Hackworth, who was my battalion commander.
Okay. I understand that you were a firefighter, correct?
Yes.
Do you want to discuss any details about your career as a firefighter after the war?
I think that the Vineland Fire Department was my biggest motivation to make it through the war. I wanted to be a fireman since I was a kid. I just never stopped playing with fire engines. And I was lucky enough to make it home. I think I was worried more than anything after being wounded of not being able to take the civil service exam for firefighter, because it was a physical exam as well as a written examination. So I tried my best. I ran every day. I watched what I ate. I drank a lot of water. I wouldn't have gyms back in the day, but you did all kinds of exercise to get yourself squared away. Took the test, was admitted to the fire department at first as a volunteer, and then 2 years later was hired full-time by the city, and then I spent 30 plus years full-time with the fire department, and now I'm still working part-time teaching firefighters.
That's great. So you said that it was your motivation to make it back. Was there anything that you did while you were a firefighter that you're extremely proud of that you would like to discuss?
I don't know. I enjoyed every day. Being a firefighter was not a job. It was a pleasure. You had a lot of good people that you worked with. You had a lot of good people that you met. I was able to do a few things. I think I left my mark. I believe in training firefighters. I still do. once you're a firefighter, you're always one. You never lose that. I don't care how old you are. You still talk to the retirees. It's like being in the service all over again. You become a group, a select group. No matter where you go, if you wear the shield, you go in another town, firefighters from that town embrace you, and you're one of the boys. So I was blessed to be able to live my life's dream.
When this war started to come to an end, before it came to an end, was there anything that you had seen or been through that you kind of took away with you after you came home?
I'll be honest, I wasn't the most outspoken person when I went into service. But when I came back, I felt that seeing some things that happened during the war and to our men and women in the service, that I did not hesitate to challenge the government. I didn't want to take anything that they said as gospel. I wanted to know the rationale behind it. Not in a hostile way, but just listen, I've seen you guys make some pretty bad mistakes. What's this all about, this new program or this new thing that we're going to do? I want to know more about it and those kind of things. So I guess you became, I guess the word is suspect, more than I'll do anything for my country. I'm proud of the Stars and Stripes. I'm very proud of the men and women who I've served with and are pleasantly serving. But I think that the experience of being in the armed forces, whether it be in combat or not, definitely matures you to handle life's things a lot better and not to be afraid to express your opinion.
Were there any battles in particular or fights that broke out that stick out in your mind?
The one that I remember the most vividly was during a thing, I was there when they had the Tet Offensive in 1968, and we were in the 9th Infantry Division, 4th to the 39th, which was primarily an infantry division. We had no tanks, very few vehicles. We moved around by boat or by helicopter, but in this particular battle in the Cholan section of Saigon, we were attached to the 2nd of the 47th Infantry, which was a infantry battalion or brigade that had tanks and armored personnel carriers. And it was different. We didn't have these machines. We didn't have this technology. We didn't have this firepower. And we were going through this section of town during the height of the Tet Offensive, and we received hostile fire from the streets and from the buildings, snipers, machine gun fire. And without hesitation, these vehicles did a thing called the herringbone. One went this way, one went that way, and just literally flattened blocks of everything. And I was like, whoa, what is this? But this is the way they do business. We didn't have that firepower. We were predominantly a rifle platoon, a rifle company with some machine guns. It was just, and this was, I guess looking back at it, I didn't realize it at the time, but Tet Offensive was one of the biggest clashes of the war. And to see that type of firepower and, the precision that it was like, this is what we do, boom, boom, boom. And it was gone. Blocks were gone. I mean, take no prisoners. This is war. War is hell. This is the way it is. That sticks out. I don't know that it's right, but I believe that's the way to do business. We're at war. Somebody's shooting at us. Let's find out who it is and get to the bottom of this.
Did you meet anyone in Vietnam that, well, first of all, did anybody in Vietnam speak English? Did the people in the villages that you meet, did most of them speak just Vietnamese, or did any of them speak any English?
A little bit. They knew some basic conversation. In our units, we had folks that were known as Tiger Scouts. They were soldiers from either the Viet Cong or the North Vietnamese Army that had decided to switch to our side. They knew our language, and we started to learn theirs. And I'd say it was, nobody that I saw in my whole career spoke fluent English, and I never spoke fluent Vietnamese, but we had that, I guess it was a resource, because in many cases the Tiger Scouts saved a lot of lives. They knew the workings of how the Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong fought. They knew about their intelligence network, and they were a great resource, and they became buddies. I mean, we went this way, we never to see them again. They went back to their homeland, we went back to their homeland.
Okay. When the war ended, where were you and how did you find out about it?
Whew. I don't even remember. If you could tell me, if you asked me that question, where were you when the war ended? I know it was here because I came back to Vineland. I never went anyplace else. Where specifically? Wow. I couldn't tell you. I don't know that I celebrated or anything. I was just, I guess I was relieved that it was over. It was just, okay, we're going home. And, we saw it when I was there that we were going to go home. There were stories of, guys pushing helicopters over the side of the ships because they weren't going to take them back. But I guess the word was I was relieved that it was over. I didn't think that anybody else should have to go through what we went through. There has to be a better way of solving these problems.
Right. Okay. So is there anything else that you would like to say before we close?
I just thank you for letting me share my small experiences with the rest of the folks that are going to see this. And I want to, I guess I want to just hope that all our folks that are in harm's way right now make it home safe. As rough as we had it, I think they've got it rougher.
Thank you for watching another edition of the Veterans History Project. Please stay tuned to VPS TV on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Fios Channel 41 for more quality educational programming. Good night.